The crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber pierced the violet sky of Nexus Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Inside, Commander Xereth's talons clicked against the polished obsidian floor as he approached the central podium. His ceremonial armor, scarred from countless battles, contrasted sharply with the pristine surroundings and immaculate robes of the council members seated in their hovering platforms above. Esteemed council, Xereth's voice resonated through the chamber, its usual military precision tempered by age and experience. I stand before you today not as a decorated commander of the Zarkax fleet, but as someone who has witnessed humanity's potential firsthand. His 4 eyes, each bearing the neural enhancement implants of a veteran warrior, scanned the assembled faces. High Counselor Vexna leaned forward, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with barely concealed irritation. Commander Xereth, you've requested this emergency session to discuss the Human Containment Initiative. Yet again. The last words carried a hint of dismissal that made Xereth's primary heart clench. Because you're underestimating them. Again. Xereth activated his neural implant, projecting a holographic display of Earth's solar system. You see a primitive species barely able to reach their own satellite. I see a race that went from atmospheric flight to lunar landing in less than 7 decades. That was nearly 2 centuries ago, interrupted Counselor Mix, his tentacles writhing in agitation. Our latest analysis shows their technology has plateaued. Their political structures are fragmented, their military resources divided. Xereth's laugh was harsh, lacking any trace of humor. Plateaued. They haven't plateaued. They've adapted. Every limitation we've imposed through the containment protocols has forced them to innovate in ways we couldn't predict. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to display various human installations across their colonial worlds. Look closer, he commanded. What you call primitive is deliberate. They're not showing us everything. I've studied their history. Their entire civilization is built on successive waves of seemingly weaker powers outmaneuvering stronger ones. They don't think like us. High Counselor Vexna's markings flashed with warning patterns. You sound obsessed, Commander. Perhaps your experiences in the Proxima incident have clouded your judgment. Xereth's secondary hearts began pumping faster at the mention of Proxima, but he kept his voice steady. The Proxima incident is precisely why you should listen. We lost an entire battle fleet not to superior technology, but to mining ships converted into weapons. Civilian vessels that ignored every protocol of engagement we knew. They turned their own casualties into advantages. Ancient history, Mix dismissed. Our current containment strategy is based on decades of observation and analysis. The humans are contained, their expansion limited, their technology controlled. Xereth slammed his taloned hand on the podium, the sound echoing through the chamber like a gunshot. Several council members flinched. Contained. You've given them boundaries, and in doing so, you've forced them to perfect everything within those boundaries. Their ships may look crude, but they're stronger, more adaptable. Their weapons might seem primitive, but they're tested, reliable, and deadly effective. He paused, letting his gaze meet each council member in turn. But most importantly, you've given them something far more dangerous than any technology. You've given them a reason to prove themselves. Enough. Vexna's voice cracked like thunder. Your concerns are noted, Commander, but the Council's decision is final. The containment protocols will be tightened. The human problem will be solved. Xereth stood silent for a moment, his enhanced eyes taking in the resolute faces above him. In them, he saw the same confidence he'd witnessed in countless commanders before they faced humans in battle. The same confidence that had preceded so many disasters. Very well, he said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. But when they break free of your containment, and they will break free, remember that I warned you. Humans don't just adapt to overcome obstacles. They transform themselves through conflict. Each challenge you present doesn't weaken them. It teaches them. And right now, we're teaching them exactly how to defeat us. As he turned to leave the chamber, Xerath activated a private neural link to his ship's eye. Begin reactivation protocols, he subvocalized, and access all archived footage from the Proxima incident. They'll need to understand what we're about to face. The council chamber doors sealed behind him with a whisper, leaving him alone in the corridor. Above, through the crystalline ceiling, he watched as defense platforms moved into new positions around Nexus Prime, their weapons primed and ready. Ready for a threat they didn't truly understand. They think they're preparing for war, he muttered to himself. But humanity has been preparing for this moment their entire existence. His words echoed in the empty corridor, a final warning that, like all the others, would go unheeded until it was too late. The diplomatic vessel Unity's Grace emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Captain Sulra stood on the bridge, her iridescent scales shifting color with anticipation as Earth came into view. A blue marble suspended in the void. "Status report," she commanded, her translator implant converting her natural harmonics into standardized galactic common. "All systems nominal, Captain," her first officer responded. "Human detection systems are primitive. They shouldn't have noticed our arrival." Sulra's facial membranes twitched in amusement. The Council's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority, demand compliance with new containment protocols, and avoid actual conflict. A show of force disguised as diplomacy. Multiple objects approaching from lunar orbit, the sensor operator announced. Primitive chemical propulsion, likely inspection vessels. "As expected," Sulra replied. "Maintain course. Let them see our energy spike." The warning cut through the bridge's calm atmosphere. Multiple signatures. They're not inspection vessels. The human ships, previously appearing as crude metallic constructs, suddenly transformed. Panels shifted, revealing weapon systems that had been perfectly camouflaged as structural components. What had seemed like clumsy maintenance drones detached, forming a complex defensive grid. "Impossible," Sulra whispered. "Their technology level. They're hailing us." Communications reported. Audio only. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect galactic common. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Your stealth systems and weapons configuration classify you as a military vessel, not a diplomatic one. Power down and prepare for boarding." Sulra's scales flushed with indignation. "This is the diplomatic vessel Unity's Grace. We come under the authority of the Galactic Council. Your vessel's quantum signature matches known military configurations," the human interrupted. "You have 30 seconds to comply before we consider this an hostile act." "They're bluffing," her tactical officer insisted. "Their weapons are basic kinetic." The first shot passed straight through their supposedly impenetrable shields, piercing the outer hull with surgical precision. Alarms blared as atmosphere vented from the breach. "How?" Sulra demanded, watching in horror as more human vessels emerged from hiding spots throughout the debris field. "Our shields. They've matched their weapon frequency to our shield harmonics," engineering reported, panic evident in their voice. "They've been studying us. The whole time we were watching them." "They were watching us back," Sulra finished, understanding dawning with terrible clarity. Commander Xerath's warnings echoed in her mind, warnings she dismissed as paranoid ramblings of an old warrior. The human voice returned. "Your shield frequency modulation is impressive, but predictable. We've had decades to analyze your technology while you thought you were containing us. Final warning. Power down or be disabled." Sulra's mind raced. The Council's intelligence had been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. These weren't the actions of a primitive species afraid of superior technology. This was a race that had spent years preparing for this exact moment. "Captain," her first officer urged, "our orders." "Our orders were based on false assumptions," Sulra replied sharply. "All power to engines. Get us out of." The bridge dissolved into chaos as precisely targeted shots disabled their propulsion systems. Through the view screen, Selra watched human boarding craft approach, their designs deceptively simple yet clearly housing technology that shouldn't have been possible. In her quarters aboard his personal vessel, Commander Xerath reviewed the incident report with grim satisfaction. The Council had wanted to demonstrate superiority, but instead had revealed their own vulnerabilities. Decades of containment hadn't weakened humanity. It had given them time to study, adapt, and prepare. He opened a secure channel to his old combat unit, dormant since the Proxima incident. "Begin reactivation protocols," he ordered. "The Council's diplomatic solution has failed. Now they'll want to resort to force, and that..." He paused, remembering the horrors he'd witnessed at Proxima. That's exactly what humanity has been waiting for. As he closed the channel, a message flashed across his neural interface. A transmission from Earth, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Galactic Common. To the Galactic Council, your containment protocol is hereby rejected. Your diplomatic vessel has been impounded for military deception. You have 24 hours to open genuine negotiations before we demonstrate exactly what we've learned during our containment. Xerath allowed himself a grim smile. The Council had wanted to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. Instead, humanity was about to teach the Council the true meaning of adaptation and survival. The real war hadn't even begun, but its opening moves had just been played. And humanity had been setting up the board for centuries. The Galactic Council's war room pulsed with emergency lighting as reports flooded in from across human space. High Counselor Vexna stood rigid, her bioluminescent markings dim with shock as she processed the devastating updates. What had begun as a simple containment operation had spiraled into a military disaster. "Show me," she commanded, her voice hard with barely controlled fury. The holographic display activated, showing dozens of conflict zones. Each highlighted area represented a Council defeat, but it wasn't the number of losses that disturbed her, it was how they were losing. "Mining vessels," the tactical officer reported, his voice trembling. "They've converted their entire industrial fleet into weapon platforms. Those mining lasers designed for asteroid demolition. They're cutting our capital ships apart." Another officer interrupted, new report from the Centauri front. "They've weaponized their cargo transporters. They're using them to teleport vacuum into our ship's interiors." Vexna's facial membranes fluttered in disbelief. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone." "They're not using conventional power sources," a science officer interjected. "They've developed some kind of fusion-fission hybrid reactors. Crude, dangerous, but incredibly powerful. They're operating on principles our scientists barely understand." The room fell silent as Commander Xerath entered, his scurred armor a stark contrast to the pristine uniforms around him. He'd been recalled to active duty after the diplomatic disaster, though many suspected it was to keep him under control rather than utilize his expertise. "You wanted primitives," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Instead, you found warriors who've spent centuries preparing for this moment. Every piece of technology we thought was primitive. It was designed to be adaptable, modular, capable of being transformed into weapons of war." He approached the holographic display, his cybernetic eyes scanning the battlefield data. "Look here," he pointed to a cluster of defeated Council ships. "These vessels weren't destroyed by superior technology. They were defeated by mining ships that sacrificed themselves, their crews using their own vessels as weapons. How do you fight an enemy willing to turn everything, even their own casualties, into an advantage?" "We still have superior numbers," Vexna countered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Our technology is predictable." Xerath interrupted. "We build perfect weapons for specific purposes. Humans, they build imperfect tools that can serve 1,000 different functions. Every civilian vessel is a potential warship. Every mining facility a potential fortress." The tactical display updated again, showing new human movements. Their ships seemed to flow like water, adapting formations that defied conventional military doctrine. Where Council forces moved with precise, calculated efficiency, human forces displayed an almost organic chaos. Unpredictable, adaptive, lethal. They're not just fighting us, Gareth continued, his voice heavy with understanding. They're learning from us. Every engagement teaches them more about our capabilities, our limitations. They're evolving their tactics in real time. A new alert flashed across the display. Another Council fleet had been decimated. The footage showed human ships using gravity manipulation technology that should have been beyond their capabilities. How? Vexna demanded. How did they develop these countermeasures so quickly? Xerath's laugh was bitter. Quickly. They've had centuries. While we watched them through the lens of our superiority, they studied us. Every piece of technology we used to contain them, they reversed engineered. Every limitation we imposed became a challenge to overcome. He turned to face the Council members directly. You thought containment would keep them weak. Instead, you created the perfect laboratory for them to prepare for this war. They didn't need to develop everything from scratch. They just needed to understand our principles well enough to turn them against us. The room's lighting shifted to red as new alerts poured in. Human forces had broken through another defensive line, but this time using completely different tactics than before. They're not even repeating strategies, someone muttered. Every victory teaches them, and they adapt. Yes, Xerath nodded grimly. Now you begin to understand. This isn't a war of technology or numbers. It's a war of adaptation and humanity. He paused, watching as another Council fleet fell to seemingly impossible tactics. Humanity has turned adaptation into an art form. The tactical display flickered as a new transmission cut through their security protocols. The face of a human commander appeared, weathered and determined. To the Galactic Council, your containment taught us patience. Your superiority taught us ingenuity. And now, your war will teach you why humanity has survived every challenge we've ever faced. We don't just adapt to survive. We evolve to thrive. As the transmission ended, Xerath turned to leave. The turning point wasn't today, he said over his shoulder. It was the moment you decided to contain them. Everything since then has just been humanity waiting for the right moment to show you exactly what they've become. Commander Xerath stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his flagship pulled from mothballs for this desperate mission. The vessel's ancient systems hummed with a familiar resonance, its battle-scarred hull a testament to conflicts long past. But nothing in his centuries of warfare had prepared him for what he was witnessing now. Another transmission from the human forces. Commander, his communications officer reported. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, using our own encryption. Let them speak, Xerath replied, his cybernetic eyes fixed on the tactical display, showing the devastating progress of humanity's counteroffensive. The human commander's voice filled the bridge, carrying none of the expected strain of a species fighting against superior forces. Your containment protocols are now your prison. Your technology is now our weapon. Your understanding of warfare is now your weakness. Surrender, and we will show more mercy than you showed us. Xerath's secondary hearts clenched as he recognized the truth in those words. The Council's mighty fleets, once symbols of uncontested power, were being systematically dismantled by human ingenuity. Their perfect formations had become perfect targets. Their standardized tactics had become predictable weaknesses. Status report, he commanded, though he already knew what he would hear. Sir, human forces have adapted their civilian terraforming equipment into weapons. They're altering the gravitational fields around our fleet formations. Ships are being crushed by their own mass shadows. Another officer interrupted. New contact. They've converted their atmospheric processors into some kind of plasma weapon. It's igniting the very space our ships occupy. Xerath watched as another Council battle group disappeared from the tactical display, their perfect formation becoming their perfect tomb. The humans weren't just winning. They were rewriting the rules of space warfare with each engagement. They're not even using conventional warships anymore, his tactical officer observed, horror evident in his voice. Every civilian vessel, every mining platform, every piece of infrastructure has become a weapon. How do we fight an enemy that turns everything into a means of our destruction? We don't, Xerath replied quietly. That's what I tried to warn them about. Humans don't think in terms of dedicated military assets. To them, everything is a potential weapon, every defeat a lesson, every limitation a challenge to overcome. The bridge shuddered as nearby space distorted. Another human innovation, using their supposedly primitive full drive technology to create spatial tiers that ripped Council ships apart at the atomic level. Sir, his first officer approached, mandibles clicking nervously. The Council is demanding we launch a full counter-offensive. They want us to use the prototype planet killer weapons. Xerath's laugh was harsh. They still don't understand. Using such weapons would only give humanity new technologies to study, new methods to turn against us. Every escalation teaches them more about how to defeat us. The tactical display updated again, showing human forces implementing yet another impossible strategy. They had somehow modified their basic shield technology to create phase-shifted weapons that ignored Council defenses entirely. Look at their tactics. Xerath gestured to the display. No two engagements are the same. They're not just fighting. They're experimenting, learning, evolving. Each battle is a laboratory, each defeat a lesson. A new alert flashed across the screen. Human forces had begun targeting Council supply lines with weapons that seemed to defy physics itself. They weren't just defeating the Council's military might. They were systematically dismantling their entire war-making capability. Sir, his second-in-command ventured, perhaps if we withdraw, regroup with the main fleet. There will be no withdrawal, Xerath interrupted. No regrouping. The humans have studied our tactics for centuries. They know exactly how we'll respond to defeat because we've never learned to respond any other way. The bridge fell silent as a new transmission cut through their defenses. The face that appeared on the screen was different this time. Older, weathered, carrying the weight of command. Commander Xerath, the human said, speaking his name with unexpected respect. We've studied the Proxima incident. We know you understood what we were capable of. Your warning to the Council was correct. They did not comprehend how humanity adapts through conflict, but now they will learn, as you did, that containing humanity doesn't weaken us. It forces us to perfect ourselves within those constraints. As the transmission ended, Xerath made a decision that would forever mark him as either a traitor or a savior. Send a message to all Council forces under my command, he ordered. We are standing down. Sir, his first officer's markings flashed with shock. The Council's orders. The Council's orders are based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what we're facing. Xerath cut him off. This isn't a war we can win through superior technology or numbers. This is humanity showing us what they've become while we thought we were containing them. And if we don't stop now, they'll keep teaching us lessons until there's nothing left of our civilization to learn them. The crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber no longer pierced the sky of Nexus Prime. Instead, they lay in elegant ruins, a testament to humanity's surgical precision. Destroyed just enough to demonstrate capability, but left standing enough to enable diplomacy. Commander Xerath walked through the damaged hall, his ceremonial armor now bearing fresh scars from the final days of the conflict. High Counselor Vexna stood at the shattered central podium, her once brilliant bioluminescence now muted with exhaustion. Around her, the remaining council members watched as human representatives entered the chamber. They didn't march in like conquerors. They walked in like teachers arriving for a long-delayed lesson. You were right, Vexna said quietly as Xerath approached. About everything. No, Xerath replied, watching the human delegation. I only understood part of it. Even I didn't grasp the full scope of what our containment protocols would create. The human delegation was led by Admiral Sarah Chen, a woman whose tactical innovations had rewritten military doctrine across the galaxy. Behind her came scientists, engineers, and diplomats, many of whom had spent their entire lives studying Council technology while appearing to live within its constraints. Members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned rather than inherited. You sought to contain us, to limit our growth, to keep us safely bounded within parameters you understood. In doing so, you taught us the most valuable lesson our species has ever learned. She gestured, and a holographic display activated, showing the progression of human adaptation throughout the centuries of containment. Every restriction, every barrier, every limitation appeared alongside the innovations they had sparked. Your containment forced us to perfect ourselves within constraints. Your technology gave us frameworks to build upon. Your very presence in our space drove us to heights we might never have achieved alone. Chen's eyes met each council member in turn. You didn't contain us. You incubated us. Kizareth watched as understanding finally dawned on the council members' faces. The humans hadn't just defeated their military. They had transcended every limitation placed upon them, turning restrictions into catalysts for growth. We're not here to conquer, Chen continued. We're here to thank you, and to offer a new way forward. The chamber stirred with confusion. Even Xerath felt his cybernetic eyes widening in surprise. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our adaptability, or even our will to survive, Chen explained. It's our understanding that adversity breeds evolution. Conflict drives innovation. Limitations spark creativity. You tried to contain us, and in doing so, you helped us become something greater than we ever could have been alone. She activated another holographic display, showing designs for cooperative ventures, shared research initiatives, and joint exploration missions. We're offering partnership, not subjugation, because we've learned that the greatest advances come not from dominance, but from the challenge of working within constraints while striving to overcome them. Xerath stepped forward, his military bearing softened by newfound respect. You could demand anything, take anything. Why offer cooperation? Chen smiled, a gesture that somehow conveyed both wisdom and warning. Because the galaxy is vast, Commander, and if what you tried to contain on Earth could arise from your restrictions, imagine what else might be waiting out there. We've learned that true strength doesn't come from overpowering adversity. It comes from learning to transform it into opportunity. The council chamber, once a symbol of unquestioned authority, now hummed with a new energy. Not the sterile perfection of assumed superiority, but the vibrant potential of collaborative evolution. The choice is yours, Chen concluded. Continue to seek perfect control in an imperfect universe, or join us in learning how to thrive within its constraints. We've mastered the art of turning limitations into strengths. Now we offer to teach what we've learned. Xerath watched as the council members, one by one, signaled their acceptance. They had sought to contain humanity, only to find themselves now contained within the consequences of their own actions. But the humans, in their unique way, had transformed even this moment of victory into an opportunity for mutual growth. As the formal agreements were drawn up, Xerath approached Chen privately. You knew, didn't you? All those years, while we thought we were watching you. We were learning from you, Chen finished. Every restriction taught us resourcefulness. Every barrier taught us innovation. Every attempt to contain us taught us how to expand within ourselves. She paused, studying the old commander with respect. You understood part of it. You saw our potential for adaptation, but even you couldn't see that your containment wasn't our prison. It was our crucible. The three sons of Nexus Prime sat outside, their light catching the crystalline ruins in ways that transformed them from symbols of defeat into monuments of transformation. Humanity had proven that true evolution comes not from freedom from all constraints, but from learning to transform those constraints into catalysts for growth. The galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps, Xerath reflected, that had been humanity's greatest lesson all along. That change, even when it comes through conflict, carries the seeds of unprecedented progress.